Please join us in pondering and listening to 3 stories about the secret to happiness from 3 different cultures. 1. Egyptian culture, the feather of Ma'at. Long ago, on the banks of the Nile River, where the golden sun bathed the land in warmth, stood a majestic temple dedicated to Ma'at, the goddess of truth, justice, and balance. Within this sacred temple worked a young scribe named Aken, a diligent and curious soul. Every day, Aken observed the sacred ritual of weighing the hearts of the dead. The golden scales of Ma'at would determine whether a soul could pass into the afterlife. On one side of the scale lay the heart, carrying all the deeds and thoughts of a person's life. On the other, the feather of Ma'at, a symbol of truth and cosmic balance. Aken often watched in silence as the scales tipped heavily under the weight of hearts burdened by dishonesty, greed, or imbalance. This left him with a question that lingered in his heart. Will my heart ever be light enough to match the feather of Ma'at? One day, unable to quiet his doubts, Aken approached the high priest, an elder whose wisdom was revered throughout the land. The priest stood in the golden light of the temple, his robes flowing like the Nile itself. Aken bowed respectfully and asked, "Wise one, how can a person live a life where their heart is as light as the feather of Ma'at?" The high priest smiled, his eyes filled with understanding. "Aken," he said, "life is like the scales of Ma'at. Balance is the key. Balance between work and rest, between ambition and gratitude, between your actions and your thoughts. A heart becomes heavy when it is burdened with dishonesty, greed, or cruelty. But when you live truthfully, act with fairness, and treat others with kindness, your heart will carry no burdens. It will become light as the feather of Ma'at." The priest's words echoed through Aken's mind. He realized that happiness and peace were not gifts bestowed by chance, they were choices, cultivated through balance and virtue. From that day forward, Aken began to change. He worked diligently but also took time to rest, knowing that balance was essential. He gave generously to those in need, sharing his food with the hungry, and his time with those who sought help. He spent his evenings by the Nile, writing reflections in the soft light of the setting sun. As he watched the river flow steadily, unhurried and balanced, he found himself mirroring its calm and steady rhythm. Through these simple acts, Aken felt a transformation within himself. His once heavy heart grew lighter with each day. He realized that happiness wasn't found in chasing more, but in finding harmony in the life he already had. Years passed, and Aken's time in the mortal world came to an end. He stood before the golden scales of Ma'at in the Hall of Two Truths, the sacred chamber of judgment. On one side of the scales lay his heart, a lifetime of deeds and thoughts. On the other rested the feather of Ma'at, radiant and light. Aken watched as the scales balanced perfectly, neither side tipping. A warm light filled the hall as Ma'at herself appeared, her presence serene and powerful. "Aken," she said, "your heart is as light as my feather. You have lived a life of balance, fairness, and kindness. Eternal happiness awaits you." Aken bowed deeply, gratitude filling his soul. "Thank you, Ma'at," he said. "I now understand that true happiness is not in what we acquire, but in how we live." Aken's story did not end there. His teachings became a legacy in the village by the Nile. He shared the wisdom of Ma'at with all who would listen, guiding others toward lives of balance and integrity. Happiness, he taught, comes from living in harmony. It is in being honest with yourself and others, in seeking balance, and in spreading kindness wherever you go. The feather of Ma'at remains a timeless symbol, a reminder that a light heart is not a gift of fate, but a choice we make every day. Today, is your heart as light as the feather of Ma'at? 2. The Greek story of eudaimonia, Long ago, in the vibrant city of Athens where marble columns gleamed under the Mediterranean sun, a young man named Theo walked the bustling streets. Theo was wealthy, admired, and successful, yet within his heart, he carried an emptiness he couldn't explain. One day, with frustration weighing heavily on his soul, Theo approached the great philosopher Socrates, who was sitting beneath a grand marble column in the Agora. "Master Socrates," Theo began, his voice laced with despair. "I have wealth, I have power, I have admiration from others, yet I am not happy. Tell me, what must I do to find true happiness?" Socrates, with his calm and knowing eyes, handed Theo a small clay bowl and a pitcher of water. "Take this bowl," Socrates said, "and pour water into it. But be careful, do not let it overflow." Theo furrowed his brow, but did as he was told. Carefully, he poured water into the bowl, watching the level rise steadily. But his hand slipped, and the water spilled over the sides, soaking the ground. Socrates smiled gently. "You see, Theo," he said, "happiness is like this bowl. When you try to fill it with too much, wealth, power, fame, it overflows, leaving you with nothing but chaos. True happiness is not found in excess but in balance and virtue." Theo looked puzzled. "Virtue?" he asked. Socrates nodded. "Yes, happiness comes from living a virtuous life. A life filled with kindness, courage, and wisdom. These virtues create fulfillment that no amount of material wealth can provide. Without them, even the greatest riches will spill away." Theo pondered the philosopher's words as he walked home through the crowded marketplace. That day, he decided to change his approach to life. In the days that followed, Theo began to live differently. He shared his wealth with those in need, helping the poor in the bustling streets of Athens. He showed kindness to strangers and spoke honestly in all his dealings. Slowly but surely, he began to feel a deep sense of contentment, a happiness he had never known before. As Theo stood one evening in the olive grove outside the city, watching the golden sun dip below the horizon, he finally understood the truth in Socrates' lesson. "Happiness," Theo murmured, "is not about what I have, but about how I live." Even today, the wisdom of ancient Greece echoes in our lives. True happiness is not found in material wealth or fleeting success, but in the virtues we cultivate within ourselves. 3. Chinese culture, Zhuangzi's dream. In a tranquil Chinese village, nestled among green fields and gentle hills, lived the philosopher Zhuangzi. Known for his profound wisdom and simple life, Zhuangzi often spent his days wandering through the meadows or resting beneath the shade of an ancient tree by a quiet stream. One afternoon, as the warm sun filtered through the leaves, Zhuangzi lay down under the tree and drifted into a deep sleep. In his dream, he was no longer himself but a butterfly, fluttering gracefully through a field of wildflowers. As a butterfly, he felt no burdens or worries, only freedom and contentment. The world seemed boundless and filled with beauty. The gentle breeze carried him from flower to flower, and in that moment, Zhuangzi felt an overwhelming sense of joy and peace. But then, he awoke. The meadow was gone, and he was once again Zhuangzi, lying beneath the tree. He sat up, his expression thoughtful, and murmured to himself, "Am I Zhuangzi, who dreamed I was a butterfly? Or am I a butterfly now dreaming I am Zhuangzi?" Later that evening, his students gathered around him, eager to hear what their master had to say. One of them asked, "Master, what does your dream mean?" Zhuangzi smiled softly and replied, "Happiness does not depend on whether you are a man or a butterfly. It lies in how you perceive and experience the world. In my dream, as a butterfly, I was happy because I accepted the moment as it was, without resistance or longing. The students sat quietly, pondering his words. In the days that followed, Zhuangzi's dream became a story passed down through generations. Its lesson was simple but profound. Happiness is not about what we are or what we have. It is about how we see and embrace the present moment. Even today, Zhuangzi's dream reminds us that peace and joy are within reach, not in what we chase or achieve, but in how we choose to live each moment fully. So, I ask you, are you the dreamer or the butterfly? And does it even matter as long as you are happy?